Very much, Charles. Appreciate it. So welcome everybody. As you guys know, this session, this office hours is really on ServiceNow NLU and specifically around model tuning. Before we begin, I just wanted to quickly introduce myself to the folks who have not gotten an opportunity to meet me in person or even virtually. My name is Asif Masood. I'm a principal product manager here at ServiceNow. I've been in product management for around 8 years now. I started my career off at a company called Workday, where I helped build and launch Prism Analytics there. And most recently, I joined ServiceNow in September of last year. So it's been a little under a year. And my primary focus has been on natural language understanding. But I am a product manager in the artificial intelligence space. Now, before I jumped into product management, my career actually started off in consulting. And I had an opportunity to travel around the world and talk to a number of customers about their problems when it came to reporting and analytics. So my entire career has been embedded in helping customers understand and make sense of their data and helping them really drive valuable business decisions. I joined product management primarily because I wanted it to scale my capabilities and my thoughts and services to everyone who owned the product, not just the customers who had procured my services. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you specifically about natural language understanding and really help you understand how you can take your model from conception and into production. So with that, I wanted to quickly give you a sense for what to expect in this session. So thank you everybody who's taken the survey, the pre-survey. The results were overwhelmingly, let's talk about how you can tune, monitor, and maintain. There were a few individuals who had requested an overview and a positioning presentation.
The button that says join.
Hey, Charles, is there a issues joining the presentation? Okay, so I think we muted everybody. I just got off mute. So let me try and rephrase this one more time. So we're going to be talking primarily about tuning today. And my goal is to help you get a sense for how you can take your model, interpret it, and then tune it, and then deploy it into production. And then I'll leave you with some tips on how to monitor and maintain your model. Now, I did a pre-survey and the results were, overwhelmingly, hey, I want to learn about this. We did have a couple of folks request information about like what's the benefit of using NLU for the virtual agent, as well as some implementation guidance heavy content. Unfortunately, for those folks, please reach out to Charles. And if you would like a one-on-one session, we can definitely see if we can make that happen for you. So what I want to start off with is just a quick phrase, right? If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And this is really important when it comes to natural language understanding, because what we're trying to get a sense for is how well is your model performing when you deploy it to production. If you simply deploy it into production without getting a sense of, hey, it's really good at these types of topics and not so well with this type of topics, you're not sure what to expect, and that can cause some anxiety. So what you want to do is just get a sense of how the model is performing so that you know how to improve it, so that when you go into production, you have a sense for what to expect and you won't be caught off guard. So what I want to share with you is a pragmatic approach to how to tune your model. And it really starts with analyzing your model to begin with. We're going to take some time to really review the out-of-the-box content that's available to you, right? So when you create a model and you import the out-of-the-box content, get a sense for how we recommended that the intents be defined through the utterances that are shipped out of the box. This is your opportunity to get a sense for when you test it, how is your model going to perform? Are you going to start to see, or should you expect some gaps when it comes to testing due to the fact that your organization has a certain way of expressing themselves? So that's what I mean by analyze. Just get familiar with the content. Then the next step you want to take is test your model. This is just establishing a baseline for how your model is performing against how your end users express themselves when it comes to specific intents or actions that they'd like to take. And I'll go into the detail on all of these, but I want to leave you just quickly give you a sense for what to expect in the next couple of slides here. And then once you test and you have this baseline and you understand where your gaps in coverage are, take some time to tune the model, right? This is your opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to go into the model. I'm going to make some modifications to it. At this point, you should know what modifications, what tuning adjustments you can make that are going to yield the biggest bang for your buck when you make those changes. Okay. So the first thing you want to do after you've reviewed the out-of-the-box content is actually take some time to collect some utterances from folks in your organization. You can use any type of crowdsourcing tool, survey tool. If you noticed, we send out anything from SurveyMonkey to Microsoft Forms. It's just an opportunity for you to engage with folks that you think are good representative samples for collecting information. So for example, I've got here a sample survey. As a new or existing employee, you want to add or update phone numbers in your contact list. What would you say to a chatbot to update phone numbers in, say, HR app, right? And you'll start to collect some utterances through this mechanism. And this is extremely helpful when you want to tune your model and test it, because providing your own sample utterances is a really good starting point, but it's not the end all be all. And the more data you collect, the more accurate your model will be testing and performing against. And now we can quickly take a look at the responses here. You'll notice we get reset my password. Actually, this question is not aligned to the responses here, so I apologize for that. It should be, you want to log into HR app and you've forgotten your password or something. So my apologies. It was my mistake. So the responses in that question would be reset my password reset request. I need to change it. I forgot my PW and I can't log into HR app. Now take some time to scrutinize these collected utterances, because you'll notice that not all of them really express the intent clearly. That is to reset a password. And I'm pointing specifically to line item 3. I need to change it. What exactly do we need to change, right? This is where your critical eye will come into handy. Take a look at these and say, is it realistic for our chatbot to understand a request that says I need to change it as a utterance that will trigger the password reset? Because if you don't, then the implications of doing so will mean that I need to change it is going to start triggering, start predicting intents such as password reset. But it's also very closely similar to other utterances and other intents that might now start to blur the lines between topics. And that's important for you to know, because you want to avoid doing that. You want to have clear and concise utterances mapped to your intents. It doesn't mean that it's a bad utterance to test, by the way. It just means that you need to be critical when you test it and what you do with that information. Okay, so just to quickly recap on that, right? Review your test utterances. If you start to think things like, I'm pretty sure they intend, or I think they meant, if you start catching yourself thinking like this or saying these things out loud or to folks that you're working with, chances are it's a bad utterance. And a bad utterance meant for tuning and really improving and analyzing the behavior of your model is what I mean. Take it into consideration, but don't make any tuning adjustments based off of it. Okay, so moving on, to help you tune your model, it's important to start off with what I like to call a test sheet. And this means that you are going to take those collected utterances, you are going to add them into an Excel document or Google Doc, whatever you're using. And then you're going to take the time to create a couple of columns, such as what is the expected intent? What's the returned intent? How is the outcome in virtual agent? And then a generic column for notes. This is to help you keep track of what you think is happening or what has happened, etc. So here I have my reset password. And sorry, I have all my utterances that I collected earlier, and I've got reset my password. I've got password reset request, everything that I collected earlier. Now I've just added them in generically. At this point, I haven't really scrutinized my utterances yet, but I've just added them there, right? And I did this intentionally because as you collect more and more utterances, you're bound to miss one, right? You're bound to miss one utterance that you collected that actually isn't a good test for the expected intent. So keep that in mind as you go through and you start testing your model, that you're going to come across these situations, and that's okay. When you catch them, then you need to act accordingly. So when we think about testing a model, it's important to think about it in about 5 categories. The first category is I returned the correct topic only, meaning that when I tested it, the predicted intent was so much higher than everything else that that was the only intent that and topic that was shown to the end user. The second category is the correct topic in menu, meaning that it predicted the correct intent or topic, but it predicted some other things as well. And it wasn't 100% certain, or not, it wasn't confident enough to say, I only want you to see this topic. It gave them a selection list. That's a successful interaction because it got the end user ultimately to where they wanted to be, just not precisely right away. And that's okay as a starting point, because over time, the number of tests done for correct topic only will grow, while the rest of the pie slices are going to slowly decrease. Now, the third option is other topic, but it's okay. Meaning that, hey, actually, you know what? This utterance that I just tested, I can see why the NLU model predicted the way it did. It wasn't 100% clear. And yeah, sure, they could have meant that they wanted their password to be reset. But honestly, when I looked at this, I could have interpreted it in a number of ways. Meaning that's still a successful interaction, and we shouldn't discredit the virtual agent or NLU because we ourselves would look at it and say, yeah, doesn't make sense. And then the fourth would be incorrect, meaning the virtual agent predicted something that was, or the NLU model predicted something that was just not what we were expecting at all. These are the things that we look at and we say, okay, we need to focus our attention on these predictions, right? These utterances. What is it about this that's lacking or deficient in my NLU model? And then finally, we have fallback, meaning we're going to have people, we're going to have some, end users who interact with our survey or interact with the virtual agent, and they say things that are very, they're very specific, but they're perfectly unaligned to what we've modeled and we've built conversations around. So we shouldn't have expectations that these things trigger anything. Or maybe they do trigger one of our topics, but the utterance itself is so kind of out of there, out of the realm of what my NLU model should understand, that I'm okay with it going to the fallback topic. And that also should be considered as a successful VA NLU conversation prediction. And I'll go into an example of what exactly that looks like. But for now, what I want to do is just quickly show you, what does a correct topic look like? Well, when I tested my utterance of reset my password, which was one of the utterances that I collected, I expected it to predict get password reset link. And the outcome is right here, get password reset link. And so I'm going to say that that's correct. That's a correct topic only because the difference between this prediction score and this one is so high that the virtual agent would only show me get password reset link. That's a configuration option. I think it's defaulted to 7%. But we like this because it's going to show me only the top intent in this case. Now, a correct topic in menu looks something like this. I've got a password reset request. Okay, well, this could be, the NLU model is reading this and it's suggesting that this could be anything from get password reset link to RSA token. Now, this is going to show the end user the correct what they wanted to get to, which was get password reset link, but it's also going to show them RSA token. And I apologize for the helicopter noise. We do live close to a hospital nearby, so please bear with me on that. In this case, again, it's still a successful outcome. May not be precisely what we wanted to accomplish, but it did get the end user to where they wanted to get to. Now, let's take a look at that other topic, but it's okay type of outcome, right? And then for this one, we're going to look at something like, I need to change it. Now, I wanted it to get me to get password reset link, or at least I thought I did. But turns out, it didn't, right? And actually what it did is it predicted submit a request, escalate IT ticket, or open IT ticket. Is that correct? And the answer is, it depends on how you interpret it, right? When I interpret this, I see I need to change it. That's fairly generic. What are you trying to change? Did you submit a request to me and now you want to change that request? Do you want to change the priority on your ticket? Or did you open up something and you wanted to change something about the description or what have you? It can mean a number of things, and that's just what I'm seeing here in this prediction result. So therefore, I'm not going to knock the NLU model or the virtual agent for not being able to understand something like this. I think that's okay. And so therefore, I'm going to say the outcome is correct, but maybe I need to realign my expectations around what that intent is actually, that the intent return should actually be. Okay. And next we have, what is an incorrect prediction score, right? Well, in this case, when I test, I can't log into HR app. The predictions that are returned from the NLU model are actually around VPN connectivity, guest Wi-Fi access, and escalate IT ticket. So that's something that I look at and say, that doesn't seem right. I need to change this. I want to tune my model. I'm not going to get hung up at this point and start jumping into the model and start tuning things to try and correct this utterance, because what you don't, what's hard to comprehend is how are the tuning adjustments that you're making today really affecting everything that you tested earlier? And you want to get yourself out of thinking that way or making those types of adjustments, because really you're trying to make net gains going forward. Positive gains going forward, sorry, not net. Meaning you want to make improvements to your model without detracting anything that happened, any goodness the model is doing in the past. Okay, so again, make a note of it and move on. And then finally, we have the fallback, right? Well, what happens when someone just types in something completely off the wall, such as, please save my Google Voice number before the changes, blah, 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 that are important utterances to understand and be able to handle. But the question is, if I wanted this thing to open up an IT ticket, do I really need to add this type of utterance, or do I really need to tune this type of utterance, tune my model to be able to account for these types of sayings? And the answer to that is no, we don't. What we want to do is we want to say, actually, I understand and recognize that I'm not going to be able to account for every single conversation that my end users have with the virtual agent. So therefore, since I acknowledge that, I need to have my fallback behavior respond appropriately to requests and utterances like this. And so what I actually expect the NLU model to do is not predict anything. I want it to return a fallback, and that's the correct outcome. So kind of a tricky one to think about, and when you're measuring the success of your virtual agent, this is a successful interaction. I got the person to where I wanted them to go, not necessarily predicting where they wanted to go. I just acknowledge that I'm not going to be able to predict these types of utterances. Okay. So what I have here now is my my Excel document or my table filled out with the expected, the returned, and the outcome, as well as the VA outcome and some notes, right? And so for that middle line right there, I just said, hey, that's a vague utterance. Don't worry about it. The outcome is actually correct. So I'm not going to, detract from my model's overall score. I'm simply acknowledging it as it's a thing that someone's going to say. I know that they know where they want to go, but it wasn't clear enough for us to understand. And I also have the save my Google Voice number before the changes occur in 2020 test utterance, which is, hey, I get that you're trying to get to you want to open up an IT ticket, but that's not a utterance that I need to tune around. What I do have is some goodness in here that is, I need to tune my model so that it understands I forgot my PW and I can't log into HR app. Now I say that because in my fictitious world, these are things that are important to my company. People have, in my, bear with me, in my imaginary world here, I have an app called HR app, and people log into it every so often, and they do tend to ask a lot of questions around how do I reset my password? How do I log in? I seem to have forgotten my password, or I got locked out somehow. So it's something I need to account for, and it is something that I want to tune. So the next thing you want to do is, well, if I want to make some tuning adjustments to my model, I need to understand why my model didn't understand these utterances to begin with. And the things, the 3-point checklist here is that most likely my model didn't understand a word that's in my utterance, or it was a gap in the utterance shape. Now I'll tell you a little bit about that in just a bit, but just keep that in mind that there's something about the way that I said this utterance that might not be properly represented in my model. And the third thing you want to look for is utterance imbalances across your intents. Meaning, do I have a single intent that has over 100 utterances tied to it, and the rest of them have maybe 10 or 15? That would be an imbalance. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, but in general, it's good to have some sort of ballpark range when it comes to adding utterances to your model. Okay, so deficient vocabulary, things you want to look for are going to be like password, HR app, and then imbalance or gap in shape would be things like login. Okay, so let's take a look at deficient vocabulary first, right? When I did this test, the first thing that I noticed was that my model doesn't have the vocabulary that I'm looking for. HR app and PW should probably be added because those are ways that my end users talk to the virtual agent. They use these words. And I expect that if I haven't gone into production, I expect people to say these things given the survey outcomes that I have. So therefore, I should add these as vocab words to my model. Okay. And then what I want to do is look inside of my intents and the utterances within them and say, well, are those words represented there? Do I reference HR app or do I reference PW anywhere in my utterances? And if the answer to that is no, then that's another thing that I need to be on the lookout for, right? I'm assessing my problems right now, and I'm saying like, oh, okay, I can kind of get a sense for why the model is not predicting correctly or is not understanding what I'm trying to say. And it's because I don't have any references to PW or HR app. And those words that are critical are not even represented in my out of the box in my model. And that's okay, because that's why these models that we deliver out of the box are customizable, because we want you to take them and really put that remaining 20% effort into them to get them to where they need to be. Okay. Regarding gaps in utterance shape, right? So login is a verb type of action, whereas login is a noun, right? So if I recall the test results, that I can't log in was triggering VPN connectivity. So when I look at VPN connectivity, what I see is I've got actually a very similar shape there, right? That phrasing is actually represented in VPN connectivity, which makes me come back and say, I got it. I'm not expressing this action of logging in as clearly in the get password reset link, but I am in VPN connectivity, and that might be the reason why I'm getting an incorrect prediction. On the get password reset link, I do reference login, which is a noun. A nuanced difference, but these are the things that are that you may come across, and it's important to know that the shape of an utterance plays a part in the prediction outcome. Okay. And then finally, utterance imbalance across intents. When you think about a balanced utterance, or balanced, we look at things like, okay, all my utterances generally have a ballpark range. There aren't a whole, there's nothing that really catches my eye here. But if I look at something that's imbalanced, the things that catch my eye are going to be, wow, I've got over 190 utterances for RSA token, and I've got 118 for guest Wi-Fi. When I have this type of imbalance, the model tends to skew predictions in the direction of RSA token and guest Wi-Fi access, which is not something I want to do. Or sometimes, I'm just going to throw this out there, but this is really the exception rather than the rule. You do want to have, you do tend to have one or two topics that you really kind of want to emphasize more, because that's generally where a lot of your traffic is. And there might be more expressions for that topic. If you find yourself in that situation and you don't want to create finer grained topics, or the effort is too high for the short term, then this might be your exception. But in general, in Orlando, with reusable topic blocks, this shouldn't be an issue anymore, and that you should get into the habit of having more balance across your intents. Okay, so I've gone through, I've scrutinized my model, and I've realized that, okay, I don't have PW, I don't have HR app. I'm also detecting that this log in is a nuanced difference between login. So I need to balance, I need to add an utterance. I may need to add an utterance shape, right? I definitely need to add vocab, but I might need to add this utterance shape, because that is something that I noticed. Right now I say that because there were two problems with this utterance that I tested. One was my model didn't have any reference to HR app, which is low-hanging fruit, because I can simply add that as vocab. The other was that the utterance shape didn't have login, it had login. So, what I don't want to do is get into the habit of saying, let me just add everything and then test it. What you want to do is tiptoe into this. Incrementally test after you make a tuning adjustment. Start with your vocabulary, then take a look at your utterances, and then finally do some rebalancing. So adding vocabulary here, we're going to start off by adding PW, and we're going to use a regex expression, because this will help us account for the capitalization. If somebody comes in and types in capitalized PW, another person comes in and says lowercase pw, and then maybe someone says capital P, lowercase w, whatever, right? We want to account for all the variations of that. And then what we want to do is we want to add our synonym. PW to us means password. It's something that we want our model to know and understand. So we add password as a synonym here, and then we click save and we move on to the next vocab word, which is going to be HR app, right? HR app is my custom application that I use in my fictitious company, and I want my model to know about this. So again, I'm going to add that regex pattern, and the synonym here is going to be application. And so what I'm going to do now is, now that I've added these vocab words, what I want to do is test it, right? So I forgot my PW. Let's test that, right? Oh, these animations are out of sync, but that's okay. I forgot my PW. What that results in when I test it, if you could see it behind this one, would have said that yes, the correct prediction is now returning, hence the check mark here. However, simply adding HR app as a vocab word to my model did not result in the right prediction. What it's telling me here now is actually, I think I need to start looking at the shape of this utterance a little bit more, right? This concept of login versus login seems to be something the NLU model really holds on to, and it should, because after all, it's being taught vocab words and sentence subject verb agreements. I need to pay attention to that. I need to look at this and scrutinize it a little bit more and say, is this something I need to add to my model? Okay. And so this is where we add that utterance shape to account for that general phrasing. So in this case, I want to add something that says, I can't log in to the get password reset link. Okay. And I'm going to reference my synonym here, application. Now, I'm referencing the synonym as application here because in my world, I've got over 200 applications that I need to track, but I can't, because I don't want to imbalance my utterances, I'm not going to reference all of them inside of my utterances. Instead, what I'm going to do is just point back to the synonym. If you have general guidance is that if you have around 30 entity values or less, you can probably refer to them and you can take advantage of entity detection. But if you have more than that in my world, then what you want to do is point to the synonyms instead of the actual application or the entity itself. Okay. So at this point, what I want to do is test, train, and test again. And I'm going to review the incorrect outcomes if there are any. So I type in, I can't log into HR app, and I get 100% predictions score for that test utterance. Fascinating, right? Because I did not actually reference HR app in my list of utterances. I pointed simply to the synonym, right? So I'll go back. I added in, I can't log into application. I'm testing, I can't log into HR app. So what this means is the more applications I add as vocabulary to my model, the more accurate those predictions are going to come back because I'm pointing to that synonym in my utterances, and I don't have to add more utterances to account for every application I have. Okay, so we're good. Once you go through a couple of iterations of this, and it usually takes about, I want to say 2 to 3 times, depending on how many test utterances you collect, how fast how disciplined are you with making your tuning adjustments in one shot, as opposed to testing and tuning iteratively. It takes about 2 to 3 times, I would say, on average. If you're focused on this and dedicated, I would guesstimate anywhere from 2 weeks to implement an NLU model for about 5 topics. Once you're in production, what you want to do is monitor the performance. Okay, and in Orlando, we provide an out-of-the-box dashboard that allows you to review how many predictions were made correctly, how many of them were skipped, and how many of them were incorrect. Okay. So if you are thinking about skip predictions, means that you probably you're in this mode where the virtual agent presented a list of topics and none of them matched. Meaning I didn't see what I was looking for. I'm going to go ahead and click, I want something else, or, I'm just going to open up a ticket. In those cases, what you want to do is you want to look at those and you want to understand, is there a new topic I need to create, right? And we can use clustering, and I'll get into that a little bit, to understand what are those utterances that people are asking for, right? Those could be new opportunities for me to further deflect. And then you want to look at your wrong predictions. When you receive an utterance and it predicts something completely wrong, you want to fix that. This is where those tuning techniques will come into the picture. We want to get people to the right topics, present them with a list of topics. We don't want to send them to the wrong topics. That's just not the right behavior. And that could sometimes be frustrating for end users, and rightfully so. So take a look at those wrong predictions and really start to analyze them. Okay, and I'm just taking a look at the clock, see where we're at. So maintaining your model, right? You're going to get these utterances, and you're going to be able to see transcripts for your conversations. What you want to do is take advantage of clustering. Clustering is part of the predictive intelligence product. You can just simply type in predictive intelligence in your search bar. If you haven't done that, you'll need to activate the plugins, and simply just go to plugins, search for predictive intelligence, and you should be able to activate it in your instance, probably in a minute. From there, what you want to do is look at your chat logs and start to cluster them. And what you can do is you'll start to get new insights into what end users are asking of the virtual agent. For example, with the COVID-19 pandemic, right? People are forced to work remotely, and we're doing a lot more virtual type of sessions like this, where we turn on our video and somebody's walking behind us, or more recently, people were just able to hack into Zoom and actually show and be a part of conversations that they shouldn't be listening in on. So it's reasonable to expect that people are going to talk to the virtual agent about these things, right? So when you start to cluster, you start to pick up on new topics, right? Things that are recent and important to a lot of people, that your NLU model and your topics are not tuned and built to handle. So this is your opportunity, and this is your way of being able to get a sense for what those new things are. And you can start to add in vocabulary words and create new topics, as well as create new articles to support these types of conversations and these types of requests that come in. Okay, and just a quick note about the cluster. So what this is showing me is it's looking at all of the chat logs or short descriptions that are out there that are in my instance for the last couple of months, or 1 month, whatever it's been set up to do. And it's saying, I'm looking at the short descriptions across everything. And I'm picking up that people are talking a lot about Zoom here. I've got some, Zoom bombers. I've got some, RSA token issues still, database locked, etc. Right? And it's saying that I've got a cluster of these types of incidents. I got about 58 of them. 80% of them are pretty much the same. Why don't you go ahead and click into this and then, see for yourself, right? And that's what clustering allows you to do. And you can use clustering on chat logs. You can use clustering on on the descriptions or short descriptions of incidents to get a sense for what people are talking about recently. Okay, we've got 15 minutes and I can go in one of two directions. But before I even talk about that, just to recap on the lessons learned here, we talked about how to test an NLU model, how to analyze mispredictions. We talked about the tuning techniques how to monitor its performance, and finally how to maintain it. Now I can open this up for questions at this point, or I can log into an instance and demo some of these capabilities and these tuning techniques. With that, do we want to maybe take a quick poll or just quickly open up for questions, and maybe you guys can express yourself in chat? Charles, sorry to spring this on you kind of ad hoc, but I want to make this valuable for the end users and for everyone, for the audience here.
No, you're good to go. It's up to the audience which way they want to go. Either which way is fine with me.
So why don't we just open it up in the chat? I've got it open here, and you guys can just type in, do you want to ask questions or do you want to see a demo?
Hi, how are you? I'm sorry I was late. Luis Vera, one of the ServiceNow admins. If my opinion, the presentation is very clear. Wow, this is very useful. I mean, it makes the difference between a successful project and an unsuccessful one, because this builder is awesome. I mean, I don't have another way to describe it. My opinion is to see it in action. Yes, all right.
Does everyone else kind of second that or third that? If you do, just go ahead and click on the raise your hand in there, and that'll give us a good indication.
And I'm also looking at the Zoom chat here. I've got a few folks who have said they'd like to see a demo.
Okay.
So I can do that. And while I'm doing it, because it's I could do it pretty quickly. I think I could hit on the important notes, but you guys are free to ask questions to me while I'm going through this. And I'll do my best to multitask. So here I am in my instance, and I'm going to go to my test sheet in the presentation, so I've got a good reference of what I'm trying to test here. The demo I can show you guys is what does that tuning process look like? I showed you screenshots, and sometimes that's enough, but I know from personal experience that I like to see it in action. So the first thing I want to do is type in, I forgot my PW, and I'm going to test that. And what I'm going to notice, and actually this is showing me 100% because I've already tuned the model. So I'm just going to train it again. I saw something in the chat log, so while this is training, cool. There we go. So I'm going to type in, I forgot my PW once more. And notice how it says RSA token, right? So I wanted it, like what's funny is that the previously published predictions, right? I had clicked publish before I had retrained. So this is what would have actually been in production. You can see the difference. You can see that my previously trained model that was in production, or that's my fictitious production, is showing me that that would have been 100%. So this is sort of like the before and after view of it. Now, what I would do is say, okay, I've already gone through, and I'll do that with you guys live here. I'm going to look through my utterances here, and I'm going to say, do I have PW reference anywhere? And I can do a Control F and just type in PW, and nothing is coming back, right? So what I can do is go back to my tab where my NLU model is, go to vocabulary, add synonym, type in PW, reference the correct synonym here as password, click save, and then type it in again. Oh, actually I've got to train it before I test it. While I'm doing this, if you guys could in the chat, I'm curious about where are you in terms of roadmap in implementing virtual agent or virtual agent with NLU, if you've got virtual agent already, if you can share that with me in the chat, that would be very helpful. And I'm interested in how I can help you, or if you feel like you're enabled enough to implement this on your own. So I've added the vocabulary. I've trained my model to now understand this. I've added the synonym of password. Password is referenced in the get password reset link, NLU intent. I should be good to go, but let's test anyway. So I've typed in, I forgot my PW. I'm going to click go. And right there, I get my get password reset link as 100%. So let's now test the I can't log in to HR app. So I test this and, unsurprising, I don't get the get password reset link, for the reasons that I described. Again, I'm looking for that I can't log in, right? So I'm going to type for log in, and I get a couple of logins, which we already knew, but I don't have a whole lot of ins in my, I don't have that verb phrasing of it. But that's not what I'm looking for. I already know that HR app is not in this list of intents yet. So I need to kind of put a strategy together. And if I go through my checklist of things to do when I tune, the first thing I want to do is just test to see if adding a synonym is going to help my model understand this utterance. So what I'll do is I'll add in the word HR app. I'm going to reference application, click add, save, train, and once that's done, I'm going to test it. So I'll put you guys on the spot. I asked a question about, what are your plans for implementing NLU with a virtual agent? I didn't get any responses in the chat, so please take a second. If you've got, if you could just quickly send something like soon and within the year, sometime next year, that's good enough for me. I just want to get a sense for where you are in your journey. So please do enter that in the chat when you have a second. Okay, so I've trained the model after I've added the vocab word. I've got it linked to a synonym of application because I wanted to know that HR app is an application. Now, get password reset link does not actually reference applications. So this might be a problem when I test it, but let's go ahead and try it anyway because, I'm making the model more aware. So I test it and kind of unsurprisingly again, I don't get the result I'm looking for. And now this is where I go to step 2, which is let's add some general utterance shapes to the intent to start to account for this phrasing. Okay. So I'm going to take this and reference application instead of HR app. Add that there. Click train again. Okay, looking through the chat. See some folks are likely within the year. Thank you guys. Thank you, Heather and Kevin, for sharing your plans. Okay, then what we're going to do is test this once more. And I'll just test it verbatim. I can't log into HR app. And what it'll do is trigger the correct intent with 100% confidence. Now this is word for word, I can't log into HR app. But now this concept of being unable to log in is clear to the natural language understanding model. So regardless of the application, so long as I add those as synonyms to my model, the NLU model will now understand the inability to log into an application. So that's a quick demo on testing and tuning. What I'd like to do is, we got 5 minutes together and I know Charles has a hard stop. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Friday silence.
Sorry.
There we go.
Well, I mean, I just want to take advantage. Yes, it's not a question. It's more than a second opinion. For example, this will help us a lot. I hope we start using it. Of course, there is always a challenge. You are the examples that you are using are very straightforward in a way. But for example, for us, sometimes it becomes a challenge, a simple word. For example, let's say Concur. Concur is an application. Yep. Sorry, what?
No, please continue.
All right, okay. So I will be fast. I mean, I will be quick. So Concur is an application that is used by any different departments. For example, finance. Finance has, they do some things regarding to finance. I mean, ITE, we also do some things. There is, and also the inside of ITE, there is a section that is system access that also have a piece of the pie. So for us, the virtual agent, even though it's gonna help a lot, this model will be very useful to see how well we direct our users, because it's difficult sometimes, because you cannot use the word Concur, because Concur is used even for more departments that I just mentioned. So have you, for example, do you have that in your company, something that that is used for different departments inside of the company, and you have to successfully direct your clients to the right documentation service?
Yep. Yeah, and there's one thing to be able to pick up and understand what is the end user trying to, what are the words that the end user is saying? Do I understand those first and foremost? Concur could be, hey, I'm agreeing with you. In this case, it's an application. And so what we want to do is teach the model to say that when you hear concur with the capital C, or when it's used as a noun, then understand it as an application. And correct. Then what you want to do is you need to understand, well, okay, I've got various departments that will interact with Concur, and when they do, they mean to do different things. So how do I design a topic, or how do I make use of some type of variable or something so that I can drive them in the right direction? And you gotta kind of figure this out. And what I mean by that is this use case really going to drive the value that you're after in the first place? If it's like, yeah, you got a couple of people, or a reasonable amount of requests that come in around this Concur use case, is it worth your while, right? You should be focused on the bigger picture first, and then eventually get to your finer grained use cases next. That being said, not to kind of cast an unfair blanket onto what you just said, as if it's important, then that's where designing your topics and leveraging some of virtual agents' capabilities is extremely important, right?
Gotcha.
I've talked to another customer, and I'll just make this one point and I'll stay quiet. You can take advantage of variables or make the virtual agent aware of who the end user is, find out what department they're from, and reference that information in the topic.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. Okay. I'm sorry for interrupting. I mean, yes. Okay.
No, Louis, thank you. Thank you for sharing your question. I appreciate it.
All right,
And that's
all
why
right.
I'm here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. That you just gave me a good idea. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And Charles, I know we're out of time, so if you need to drop off, I think you can drop off, and I can stay on for a few more minutes if people would like to.
that'd be great. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Okay. So are there any other questions from the team? Otherwise, please feel free to drop off. I know it's a Friday and we're all busy.
I have a question about how this would apply with like knowledge base, or if you can plug this into use with knowledge base. We're building our knowledge base out currently and using the meta field for search criteria when users are going in and looking for the articles. But I don't know if this would be something that could be used for that, or if it'd be overkill, because sometimes, if someone knows a tip sheet as that IT tip sheet or something like that, I've been having folks put common search terms in for meta, but I don't know if using this would be helpful or overkill. I don't know if that would work.
So with virtual agent, you have the ability to search the knowledge base with users at a user's request, and we've got a couple of for example, if an end user just wants to open up an IT ticket, then the first thing we do is say, okay, type in a short description, and once they do that, we take that short description and we first search the knowledge base to see if there's an article that could be helpful in self-service here. So that search string is passed through, and it does search the knowledge base at that point. And
Okay.
What you kind of need to do is make sure that whatever's in your knowledge base is in the search, or whatever the person's typically search for are in your knowledge base in some sort of form.
Okay, so this really is more along the lines of virtual agent and in that kind of setting, rather than just applying this straight to the knowledge base as a tool. That would not work, it sounds like. Maybe I misunderstand.
Well, so I understood the use case of can I search the knowledge base through the virtual agent? And let me pause there. Did I?
We are not using the virtual agent at this point, and this, I may have understood how the NLU works in general on the platform. Is it just a virtual agent tool that allows you to link up different, so like what you described with the knowledge base, that would be a good use case once we get virtual agent up and running. But with virtual agent not being in play, this may not then be applicable to us.
Yeah, so right now, NLU is a platform capability, and our application footprint right now is through the virtual agent. We do have plans to expand and broaden this capability to other places that end users interact. So I think I answered your question there.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, thank you guys. Thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. Happy Friday, and I hope all of you have a safe and happy weekend. Thanks. Bye.